Node slash isn't going to be much fun if we don't have any users. Some might say it still won't be fun, but they can go watch a different series. We have here a simple schema for representing users. At this point, we're only going to store an email address. It may not seem like it yet, but we seriously will get to a point where our schemas have more than one field. Users will be separate from their characters, since node slash will hit such epic proportions that each user will likely want to have 40 characters, just like the diehards do in World of Warcraft. But I digress. For now, we're storing the user's email addresses. And yes, for now, we're tabling checking to see if we actually got one, and if what the user entered is actually an email address. So let's go create some users. Databases can have repeat data in them, but there are some pretty obvious cases where we don't want two different entries to have the same values. Here's looking at user authentication. If our users log in with their email address, then we certainly don't want to have more than one user record having the same email address. So how do we enforce that with Mongoose? Mongoose has first-class support for what we're trying to do here. We make a simple modification to how we define the email field. The way we had defined it before is just a shorthand. There's a longer version we can use, where instead of just sending the value of string, we instead send another object with property type whose value is string. Now with this expanded schema declaration, we can add in another property called unique whose value is true. And this declaration will start ensuring that we don't get records with duplicate values. And we could likely stop the episode right here because this is really all it takes to enforce uniqueness. But if you're building an app that already has data, or you want to understand how Mongoose does this, then keep watching. All right, so I haven't cleared my database. Let's go try to make another user with the same email address, and bam, it lets us. It would seem that our declaration did not work. There are two possibilities as to why this might be the case. First, we need to understand what that unique property actually does to our database. When we declare a property to be unique, we're actually declaring that we want a database level index on that property. Some database abstraction layers will issue a query to see if there's another record with the same value for the unique property, and if that query comes back empty, it allows the save or update to proceed. If you trust this method, you either have incredibly low traffic or you're about to learn about race conditions because two or more requests could have their checks to the database occur before any writes go out, and you end up with non-unique data in your database. In between the time that the check query is issued, another insert could come along doing the exact same thing, and you still end up with that duplication. Uniqueness can't be correctly validated at the application level, so it's good that Mongoose tries to create an index for us. Now we created that index on our collection, so we expect to see the index in our database, right? Let's have a look. Uh-oh, there's no index. What happened? Well, let's see what happens if we try to add the index manually. Aha, notice that we're getting an error. We can't very well add a unique index to a collection that already violates that index, so we need to fix our data first. Luckily, we caught this before we had 10 million users, each sending us around $16 a month. In our case, we can simply delete the offending records or just have Mongo handle it for us by using drop dupes. Be warned though, this is the nuclear option for dealing with our duplication. With live data, you may need to do some customer service outreach before doing something like this. And now when we try to create a user record with the same email address, it fails just as we would expect. Now there's one last thing to watch out for. Mongoose by default will go out to MongoDB and create all of your indexes. In development, you tend to not have millions of entries of data, so generally this isn't a problem, but adding a new index in production might just have this problem, so Mongoose recommends disabling this automatic creation of indexes. This is pretty easy to do. We'll just set auto-index to the result of checking to see if our environment is not production. You may need a different check depending on what environments you support. Also, you need to do this for every model. There isn't a global way to turn that off. And then lastly, you need to make sure to set this before you actually invoke mongoose.model. So the last thing we want to see is how do we then surface this creation to our users? Naturally, we have a sign-up form, which we saw at the beginning. Here is that form again, only this time it's the JADE code for it. Notice the action and method. Now in our routes file, we've wired up both the handler that presents the form and the one that handles creating the new users. And here we have the actual route handlers. The one that presents the form isn't particularly interesting, but the one that handles the creation is a bit more interesting. We're just grabbing the email from the request and using it to create our new instance. If there's an error on save, we react accordingly, and if there isn't, we continue on our merry way. Now, normally after attempting user creation, we'd redirect to a different page for a better user experience, but we're missing one key tool on how to do that, namely passing a message from one request to another. This is called a flash in certain frameworks, and we left it out for now to keep focused on how to ensure unique values in Mongoose. We'll fix this in later episodes though. Well, we have one more Mongoose concept we need to learn before we've covered what I consider to be the core of how to use it. That concept is validations, or using Mongoose's ability for us to verify that the data we entered works for the fields in question. We'll hit that next time, so until then, happy coding. If you've been watching the episodes and want to add any comments or questions about them, don't forget that each episode has a comments tab where you can say something. And also, the site has a feedback where you can find contact information. So if you think I'm talking too much, or maybe there are just some other topics that you want to see covered, let me know. Thanks for watching.